Hello, everyone. In this video, as we prepare more and more for the 2020 AP History exam and the DBQ that we're going to be doing online, I thought it would be worth spending just a minute or two giving you some suggested ways to structure your essay. I've told you probably many times before, but in case you have forgotten, the actual structure of your essay is not critically important. It is not going to be something you are assessed or graded on. However, it is worth thinking about because at a minimum, you want the reader who's grading your essay to really be able to follow what you're saying and see where you are putting each component of that essay. So in previous videos, we explored more in depth the different elements of the essay, like the thesis, contextualization, evidence, analysis and reasoning, all that stuff. But where do you put it? How do you organize it? And it's not so much that you're going to have like a subheading for the paragraph that's evidence point 1 or a subheading for analysis and reasoning point number 3. It's not going to look like that. So how would you organize it? I'm going to make a suggestion, and let me just qualify that suggestion by saying you by no means have to do it this way. There's only one piece of that rubric that tells you where one part of the rubric needs to be located, and that is your thesis or claim. Your thesis has to be located in one of two places, either in the first paragraph or the last paragraph. You can call that introduction or conclusion. I don't really care. If I'm reading that though, and I don't see something that is clearly a thesis in one of those two places, the first or the last paragraph, you're not getting the thesis point and you're not going to get a very high score on the test. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you and just in brief show you what I would do if I was organizing my essay. Okay, let's take a look and see how I can share this. All right. This is just a suggestion. In your first paragraph, and forgive me, the formatting is not very clear, but in the first paragraph, you have two things. You have your contextualization and you have your thesis. And I say they're together because, again, that thesis has to be in that contextualization or first paragraph. You don't have to do it this way. You could always flip that and make your thesis its own separate paragraph, but it has to come first. Okay, if you do it my way, you're doing it at the end of your contextualization paragraph, which makes sense logically because your contextualization sets up for the reader, here is the world of the prompt. And at the end of that, you're funneling down to the specific thesis that addresses the prompt. In the second body paragraph, you're going to have group 1 of your thesis. In other words, when you have your thesis, after you've read the documents, you're going to have one or two possible groupings of the documents. For example, if you were writing about imperialism and you have two different locations, a couple of the documents might be tied to location number 1, like Africa. So those are docs 1, 3, and 4, for example. And then in the second grouping, you have countries or documents tied to perhaps Asia. So you have docs 2 and 5, maybe that's India and China. I'm just throwing out examples here, but the idea is that you separate those two as you come to examine the documents so that it's easy to understand what you're thinking through and how you're organizing your argument. Now, notice I have suggested that you include your analysis and reasoning point 1 and 2. That's your CAP attempt or sourcing attempt in both those paragraphs. Because you're incorporating those documents into those paragraphs, it makes sense that if you're going to talk about document 3's point of view, you put it right there in that paragraph. Again, you don't have to, but this is just a suggestion. My third body paragraph, I would suggest you make your attempt at the complexity point, and you can separate this out. I have suggested that you separate that paragraph out just so that mentally you check it off. You don't have to separate it out. You can weave it into the other body paragraphs. That's totally fine. But again, by separating it out, you enable yourself to, at least in your mind, know here is where I made the attempt on this particular point. Again, I mentioned in a previous video, I've had students in the past make multiple attempts. That's fine. You can do that in multiple paragraphs. You don't have a space limitation for how much you can write. And certainly the reader isn't going to care if it's not exceptionally organized. The last thing I included as an option is a conclusion paragraph. You don't need a conclusion paragraph. The only reason I would suggest considering to put one in is if after writing your essay, you're like, dang it, my thesis isn't awesome, and I put it up front like Menenberg told me. Well, maybe you reiterate something at the end that is a little clearer version of your thesis statement. Okay, so you're restating what your claim is in more concrete and clear terms. That's totally fine. It's the last paragraph. They will read it, and it's because it's your last paragraph, if it qualifies as a claim or a thesis point, you check it off there. Again, I want to be very clear about something. I have seen very, very good and very, very bad DBQs, and I've seen them structured many different ways. This is one way to do it. It is not the only way to do it. I've seen essays that were given high marks by the College Board that had 2 paragraphs. Okay, it's not like a formula that you have to follow. This is not graded for grammar. It's not graded for spelling or style or word choice. Just understand that the reason you would consider structuring it in a way like I suggested is so that you know that your argument, what you're saying as you progress, is logical, it's clear, and it makes sense to somebody who isn't in your brain, okay? Somebody who you've never met. The reader can understand your train of thought as you are writing that essay, okay? That is why you should do it. Please take this as a suggestion, not as a mandate. If you have questions or need other suggestions, please let me know. Please comment, share this video if it's helpful. Again, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.